Hey there, folks. Michael Fisher here in the new studio. And that studio at M is the place that I'm working. This is our new space. We're at 205, the front door. Hallway. Pretty cool space we're in. This is in between my bike, back door. Little tour here. Oh, what's that over there? Well, that's the dream chair. Yep, that's what we're gonna call it. Haven't put the label on it yet. We're just moved in about a month ago. We haven't emptied all the boxes, lots of art. Haven't got the shelves all up. And then over here is to the journal section, and those are all my personal journals. Another section down here. Yep, lots of the journals for about 50 years there, folks. And started in 1979. And those journals is part of journaling, like most people understand journaling, but I use them for ideas. I use them for sometimes sketches, drawings, models, building, philosophy, thinking, stories, ideas, and a lot of it's just what's happening and analyzing the culture, analyzing people. So my desk, my easel over here. Not working on a piece right now, but I have been working on several pieces. So yeah, just thought I would invite you here and say a few words about what we're doing here. So we is Barbara and I. Um, Studio M is something we started way back in 2007, 8, somewhere in there. Sorry, 17. And we did that in Calgary. Then we moved now to Nanaimo, BC, on the Vancouver Island. And we've re found this space, beautiful space, and it's in a particular building and that's worth seeing. It's a really old house at some point. I'll show you, but this is where we are. We're in this My Inner Harbour. It's a holistic wellness center. And it's a place where people get memberships to do body, mind, spirit, rest, reflect, and reconnect is their logo. And they have these three office spaces upstairs, which they were converting and tried using them for children, which they did because parents would come here, for example, and let the children go upstairs with a caregiver and really give that nice space for rest and recovery, which we all need. So, beautiful idea by Jessica and her team, creating My Inner Harbor and renting this huge old house that we're in right now, but you can't see all of it. Of course, it's huge. And the three artists up here, we're going to all be connecting. I think there's actually four artists involved, five with Barbara and I, kind of thing. So yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting how we start programming, doing things, looking at anything from art therapeutic type work, counseling, coaching work I could be doing in this office space or in that other in between space, doing small groups as well. So Studio M is always about arts, culture, and healing. We talk about it, Barbara and I, in our vision, and that was the sign up on the door. It's got even our sort of manifesto of things that are really principles behind what we're here for. We're not here just to be artists expressing ourselves and making a living and marketing our art. That's really not what we do. We've both been professional artists and have done that, but our depth of our background is always as caregivers in human services and you know, environmental and health services, wellness center services, all those things fit really nicely with our agenda of what we think arts, in the largest sense, in the aesthetic domain, the affective domain of human existence, where we can make sense of the world and find meaning in more meaningful ways than often is available in the society, right? Having to work, make a living, look after kids, go to school, whatever people are having to do, all those things are fine, but most people don't have that time and space. So Studio M was attempting to bring different artists together of all kinds, and those are in the largest sense of the term. All media modes are welcome, even though Barbara and I, she's a performance artist primarily, does film primarily, ritualist. I'm primarily, art, painter, drawer, and I also do performance art as well and ritualist work when I need to as well. So very different combinations that can happen here. What do I do up here is I'll just give you a sense of my daily practice, and I just really am inviting you to check out my whole YouTube channel, of course. I've been going for about 8 years now, and I'll probably do some video recordings up here um, rather than just always in my house, is which where you'll usually see me when I do a YouTube video. So here I get to actually be in a different space. What happens when I come up the stairs, unlock the door, come in my studio here at Studio M? I just feel like, wow, I'm up on the second floor. I'm in a different world. I'm not in the world of my home and all the crowd and tightness of the home with all Barbara and my stuff together, plus all the domestic things of running a household. This is just really the place where I get to be, in a sense, as free as I can think about being. Of course, I feel very free when I go outside and go over to the island across the way here in the ocean. That we're right next to the Pacific Ocean, not far at all, and there's beautiful islands there to go walk on. Get quickly away into nature, but this is my way and place into kind of cultural and spiritual world as well. It's freed, right? Freed from those containments, those necessities, those demands, responsibilities in a lot of ways. Doesn't mean Barbara and I want to be free from responsibility for the communal, for the society, for the world, for the future, for 7 generations. Those kinds of phrases to us are not unfamiliar. But what do? I come up here for the first part and I'll journal. So, as you saw, 50 years of journaling. My daughter just bought me a new journal here for the studio, and so I'll come up here and do some journaling per day when I'm here, and just kind of checking in with myself. What's going on? What's important? What are some things I want to just notice? Might notice the weather as a start. I might notice I'm feeling this, feeling that. I also do probably about a half an hour meditation before I journal. That's come and sit in this dreaming chair. And the dreaming chair was a half joke, but it's a very serious also place. We really do have to dream and imagination, right? These are what artists care about deeply and should care about. All humans should care about if I had my way. But dreaming has not always been seen as significant. It certainly is if you go back into primal cultures, pre-industrial, and we call indigenous cultures here often today. They see dreaming as part of life. In fact, often they will say we're in a dream and we're just manifesting the dream through what we see as physical realities. But there's all kinds of non-physical realities and beings greater than human and the humans, peoples, and all these different species that are they call persons as well that are all participating in various kinds of dreamings, and those dreamings are important to tune into so that you can tune into what they would say and I would say is a greater attunement to reality. And you can make that reality small r or capital R. Again, that would be a philosophical thing that we could talk about if you wished. I'm certainly welcome anybody on these YouTubes to always make their comments below on questions, concerns, and I'll address them as much as I can. So that's one of the things I do, and then I'll often, when I'm sitting in this dreaming chair, maybe it's from the meditation, maybe it's after while I'm journaling, spontaneously letting things come out. I have to take the editor off. That's great. That's what I mean by freedom, right? Take the editor off so I'm not saying what I should be doing or get all uptight that, oh my gosh, I'm paying for this new space, how are Barbara and I going to make good use of it to pay for it and all those kinds of problems. You can get into that. It's real easy. But I also resisted, and I've learned over really decades and decades of having studios that it's really important to not let those impinge on what you actually are and are doing, what you're being and what you're dreaming, and then what the materials, all the art materials that we can pull out. We haven't even brought all our art studio materials from home. We have lots that we'll bring here too. And so you walk into this environment and it'll just be this invitation to, just like for a child, right? You can imagine the child part of us coming in, a dreaming chair, wow, and um, all this art materials, wow, it's just available, it's real, and yeah, it's waiting for you. You're welcome to be here. It's welcoming us. There's no signs that say do not touch, do not think, do not be critical, do not be XXXXX. So it's a place where you can come and be. That's the short of it. And that's what we're attempting to make, and that's what I'm encouraging you as you watch any of my videos, is these could be a place for you to think as well, to be, to imagine, to enter these different even states of consciousness, as we call, of course. What do you think dreaming is? Of course it is. It's about an entering different states. You can do that through meditation, yoga practices, all kinds of practices, reading, contemplation, which I do. I have a book up here. Every once in a while, I've brought several books up with me, not all my books, and I'll just take a look at this, and I'll open it up at random, and I'll go inside and Virginia Woolf and her diaries, and read some of her entries from 1920, 21. This particular book, and sometimes I'll even take notes because they're so interesting, and the writing is so interesting, and I'm just so aware and so alive in here, right? That's the key thing, is the space will enliven your senses and your sense making, and that moves into meaning making. It moves into your ethical thinking about what's important in your life. So all those combinations. And then I can go over to the easel, as I showed you briefly, a place where I can put stuff up. I can sit back. I can walk back. I can look at it. I don't know what I'm going to make in art here 90% of the time. I'm just like sketching, or I'm finding something. Oh, that's interesting. I was in the garbage can the other day and found this calendar as I was dumping out the recycling, and an image came up, and I said, well, that's a really interesting image. And I pulled it out, and I've cut some pieces of it. And then I went over and began another piece. And, you know, I'll go get that piece just to show you from found object what I can do. And I'm working on these flipboards a lot. One thing, I like them for a lot of reasons. I could do a whole video on the meaning and the metaphorical meaning of a clipboard. But, point being is I create these images. And so part of this image here is photograph cut out from a magazine, and it goes up to the red, and then that dark blue behind. And that was all in this particular photograph on this calendar. And I just liked it. And I took it and then I modified it. I've cut it. I've even manipulated, put some more extra marks on. Then I did this piece out of black piece of paper, and it was totally spontaneous from using acrylic pens and pencil crayons. And then when I put it all and glued it on this paper, then I started doing another piece of art, and everything just starts to try and speak together. I call it kind of creating a dialogue for all these different potentials. And then, I've been doing these dots around a bunch of pieces when I'm up here. They're actually really tiny squares made by hand. I think you can see, I'm not trying to be a perfect square, but they're done very quickly as a square-like shape. And I like doing those. I do sometimes really intense ones. In fact, you can see here, these are all little triangles, and there's some squares and a lot of triangles. and combinations, and I like playing with those and these shapes, geometric shapes. And then with using the lighting, you can create, well, what is this? I'm just saying, well, of course it's a piece of art. We could say that, but it's a creation. It's a spontaneous creation made from found objects that I put together, and then I kind of join them. I solve the problem. I'm trying to make them look good together when I have no idea why they should be together or could be together. And sometimes they're very ugly together, but I spend a lot of time on the sensitivity to it, right? And that's a fun solving of problems of kind of conflict and ugliness and things don't jive, and it's kind of like a conflict in relationships. So I get to actually practice conflict resolution, if you will, transformation up here in the studio practice, and I encourage other people to do these kinds of practices as well. And art is such a great medium for that. So yeah, I will do some of those kinds of works. And I don't know. I'm planning to do a memoir or an autobiography or both or a combination of memoirs. I've got enough material in my life now at age 74. It's the first time I've ever pulled all my journals out from, as I say, 1979 to present. I do about six, seven fill, a journal, like this, 200 pages or so. I'll fill that, in 2 months. So creating six of those a year, and you can imagine how many I have over here, hundreds of journals. So that's interesting because I've never pulled them out. They've always get packed away, and I hardly ever go back and look at them. Sometimes I do. Maybe I'm writing an article and I'll go back and say, "Well, I had some interesting notes on that, in the journal," but I don't really do that too often. But I feel like my unconscious through the act of writing in the hands and the settling and the contemplating on a paper, a page with pen in hand, it's just there's some real deep memory connection there that's really important to how our brain works and remembers. So I think it's really good for memory practice. It's really good for thinking, cognitive practice, kind of keep the dementia off as much as possible as I get older. But of course, it's all going to happen. Cognitive decline of some kind or another is going to happen, as well as other ailments. So I'm very aware of that at my age. I'm also very aware that I don't want to leave these behind and not be processed in some way. Like when I lay them all out and put them in order, which took hours and hours for a few days, I really started to have a connection to, oh wow, I remember in this year, 2001, where was I? Or 1992, what was I doing? Where did I live? I haven't I've opened them a few times and poked and looked, and they're pretty interesting, to see where I was thinking, but I haven't really kind of got into that. It's kind of even hard for me to go back in. I feel like my life is so full with things like just in the present, right, of just what I'm doing now and ideas and projects, writing projects, whatever. And but yet I'm coming up to the studio, and I said I'm going to give a lot of space for these journals. I'm going to pull them out for the first time all together. I can't avoid it. Every time I walk in here, sitting in the dream chair right now, I'm looking at the journals. And that's kind of, quote, my life. It's a life. And I think it's a very thoughtful life. I can be criticized on a lot of things, and I am. I have lots of critics. Um, but I will say I won't be criticized for not having a thoughtful life, a reflective life. And to me, that's the foundation of Plato and others have said, what's the purpose of a powerful life, a real important life? And it at least is one that is reflective. It is the life of learning. It is the life of teaching and learning. And as an elder now, I'm very interested in teaching more and more and more. But I also know the challenges are greater and greater because the world is so disparate, and I'm in a category of beings way up here in elder world that is harder and harder to communicate with beings that are younger than me and from other generations. So that's a great challenge in how to write a memoir, for example, which I think is doable. And I've got about 40 or 50 memoirs in my library, which I brought those books here, and I also will look at them and study and see how other people are doing memoir. So that's another thing I'm doing is it's really good to read other people, see how they write, get ideas. But to be honest, it's absolutely overwhelming. You saw the images, but it's like just try thinking about how much is in each of those journals. How am I ever in my lifetime in my energy that is limited? Uh, I get tired these days, and where am I going to? How am I going to, look at all this possibility for writing memoir? I don't want to just write an ordinary memoir. I told telling some people, I could do that. It's not hard for me to do that in a way. What's hard is to decide what goes in and what goes out when you have as much as I have of a life and so much reflectivity. I could just literally go anywhere and I could fill volumes. But so what, right? It's like, so what? That doesn't really grab me. It's not creative. It's just like if I go and I never do the same kind of art over and over again, like every piece is unique and different. I want a memoir to be like a piece of art that it could be many pieces of art within it, depending on the chapters, but each is unique. I'm not interested in repeating and repeating and repeating a lot of what I've already done, what I've already published. Yeah, of course, there's going to be some of that. Of course, there is. Of course, I'll pull out some pieces and repeat them in a memoir or an autobiography or something like that. But I also know that it's really hard to, write a memoir, get published, especially with a real publisher who does real distribution. I can always publish on Amazon or something, and I'll sell 10 copies over the lifetime of the work. But it's like, no, I would really like to get it out there. I would really like to write something that has much more spread and much more value, much more ebullience and spread. And that is something I have not really learned how to do for various reasons. Part of it's, I think I'm such a different thinker than the world wants. I don't make stuff very well for the market, the place that people go, oh, that's so cool. I understand that. I love that book. My work is a little more challenging. It's tough to get at. It's a different angle. And, whatever that's all about, I'm still learning about it. So I'm just letting you know that's what I'm learning about. So probably shared enough for today. I'll stop the recording here pretty quick and just kind of let you know that really look forward to more videos from this place, and they'll probably be a lot more in depth than this one was. So if you're looking for a little bit more meat, so to speak, on the YouTube, you'll get it in another session when I've thought more about what I want to present here. Today was a spin. Thanks for joining me from Studio M. Have a good day.